Okay, let's get straight into this. So, the story, on its face is Hasan Piker said he went to a brothel, ignites sex work debate. Let's read a little bit of this before I give my thoughts. Oh, it went blank. Of course it did. A video of a strip club lap dance and past comments about hiring sex workers have started a discussion about exploitation and sex work. Tweets and past comments from leftist Twitch streamer Hasan Piker have kicked off yet another argument online about whether sex work is inherently exploitative. On Thursday, Piker tweeted a video from inside of a strip club where a young man wearing one of his t-shirts gets a lap dance. Shay, a dancer working at that club, took the video and sent it to Piker. She said she told me that she had everyone's consent who appeared in the video to record and share it. Okay, so far I don't care, and this seems completely fine. The tweet reignited the endless debate on whether sex work is exploitative, with some of Piker's fans accusing him of taking advantage of what they perceive to be an inherently exploitative type of work, and others who claim that sex work is simply work made more dangerous and exploitative because of stigmatization, marginalization, and criminalization. One of the people arguing on Twitter threads about the lap dance replied to Piker and wrote, "Just wondering why your followers engaging in sexual exploitation of women is something you want to brag about." Let's actually look at the original tweet here. I'm curious. I'm deathly curious now. So the interaction is, oh, well, we can't look at that, but it's Piker in the strip club, obviously. And then Alex Rubenstein replying, "Tell me your followers are oafs and losers," without saying your followers are oafs and losers. He replies, "You all right, man?" And then, "Just wondering why your followers engaging in sexual exploitation of women is something you want to brag about." Then Hasan replies, "Literally, my friend who is a stripper sent me the video and was super stoked, but I guess we should have asked for your consent beforehand." Jesus Christ. Okay, let's... So, on its face, I literally don't care. And when I say I don't care, I don't mean I don't care because of the story. I mean, I don't care that Hasan went to a strip club. Personally, I don't like strip clubs. Not due to the inherently exploitative manner of work or any of that. I don't go to strip clubs because I don't enjoy the environment. Titty bars, otherwise known as like Hooters and a tilted kilt, these types of things, those things are already too much for me. I feel uncomfortable. I feel like people are being artificially nice to me, and then like and leaning into the sexual, like I just something that makes me feel uncomfortable. That's fine. I had some uncomfortable experiences with said establishments when I was younger. But my personal non-enjoyment of such activities aside, if Hasan wants to engage in going to strip clubs, or he wants to like engage with strippers in a manner that they consent to, and he is paying them a fair wage for, I have zero problem with it. And if somebody is saying, well, this is inherently exploitive, well, I've heard the argument before that these are women who would have not have engaged in sexual acts with you without payment, and therefore you're incentivizing them to go and become strippers because they want money for said activities. And they would not have done such sexual activities if they were not handed money. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. I think there's a decent amount of people in the sex work industry that would have not become sex workers if it wasn't for the pay. I can also tell you that I've met sex workers, personal friends of mine, who are in the sex work industry, enjoy being in the sex work industry, like having that type of attention, like engaging in said activities, and would do it even if there was probably less pay involved, or if it was not nearly as profitable as it sometimes can be and sometimes can't be, depending on the type of sex work you're engaging in. Because not all people think that like everybody goes on OnlyFans and makes $1 million. The majority of people who go on OnlyFans are not making enough to live off of. I can tell you that right now. The people who are making bank are the people at the top. It actually reminds me a lot of Twitch, where it's the people at the top of the platform who are making the real big bucks, while the rest of them might be making enough to get by, or might be just getting supplemental income. So, putting that aside, that there are people who want to do that outside of just the idea that this is really profitable and I'm just doing this to get by. There are people who like to do it as a career. What you're complaining about when it comes to the exploitative nature of this would apply fundamentally to basically all service work and really all work under capitalism. It would apply to factory workers if you buy goods made in a factory. It would apply to maids. It would apply to janitors. It would apply to lots of people who are doing work not because they enjoy work. I mean, I'm sure there's people who enjoy being janitors, but I'm also sure that there are people who are janitors because they need to make ends meet. The reason why this is getting attention is because we live in a semi-prudish society still. There's still a lot of prudes out there. All you need to do is look at Ben Shapiro's reading of WAP to understand that. And because sex work is something that catches the eye. It's something that the media likes to pay attention to. But fundamentally, the exploitative criticism of sex work as essentially sex work, as the idea that somebody is being paid to engage in sexual activities with you, applies fundamentally to all labor under capitalism. And so, unless I see you having that same standard for everything, it feels a little weird to me. That's the first thing. The second thing is, even if you do apply that standard to everything, there's no way you would apply that standard universally on, like, Hasan went to the grocery store today and had somebody help him with checkout. The exploitative issue, you're not going to hold that standard. It's ridiculous. Now, there is something different, right? There is a different conversation to be had here. And that's about the sex work industry and exploitation within it. Like, terrible, terrible, terrible exploitation. And this is where I think the core of the conversation should be, is that there's a terrible history with sex work industry and pimps, sex workers being murdered and hurt terribly on the jobs, of terrible overhead being taken by people who are, I don't know what to say other than, like, managers of sex workers, and them being exploited in traditional, like, anti-labor practices when it comes to screwing them out of having unions, for example. Sex workers' unions have been targeted, and unionizing practices in the sex work industry has been difficult to do because of how stigmatized sex work is. That is a conversation we can have, talking about giving power to sex workers to directly make income from their work. Trying to get rid of pimps, trying to get rid of these exploitative practices. But that's separate from the argument of sex work being inherently exploitative. That's talking about sex work having problems within its industry that need to be addressed, which is the same for Kellogg's, which is the same for John Deere, both of which companies have people on strike right now. But that doesn't mean you can't buy any cereal. That doesn't mean you can't buy any farm equipment. That just means at the moment you probably shouldn't buy anything from John Deere, and you should most certainly not buy anything from Kellogg's. That's what that means. You should be targeting those specific people who are engaging in exploitative practices. And the people in this video consented to being recorded. They consented. So in my opinion, when it comes to the standard of labor and work under American capitalism or in this world, sex work is as legitimate as legitimate of a work form as being a janitor, as being a fry cook, as being a banker, or any other type of labor. Sex work is fundamentally real work. And it's mostly prudes getting angry here, if I'm going to be completely honest. Because what Hasan says here is kind of true. Like, what, is he supposed to ask Alex Rubinstein his opinion on whether he consents to Hasan engaging with these people who consented to have this stuff put on the internet? But let's keep reading the article. Maybe I'm seeing past something. Maybe I'm forgetting something. Maybe all the sex workers I talk to don't really want to engage in such activities. And maybe there's something distinctively different here that I'm missing. They then tweeted a video from a stream between Piker and Felix, XQC. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, so I won't even attempt to. I don't want to disrespect him. Who was banned from Overwatch League in 2018 for using homophobic insults against another player. God, man. What a bad rep. What a bad rep for XQC, man. You just introduced to this, imagine you're a Vice reader. You don't know anything about Twitch space. You don't know anything about our space, right? And the first time you hear about XQC, and the only thing you hear about XQC is use homophobic slurs. Man, what a reputation. where Piker talks about his experience hiring sex workers. Okay, let's hear it.
You ever had an escort? No shame, obviously. Sex work is real work. I've had sex with not even escorts, but also like straight. I've gone to a brothel, Artemis in Berlin, and had sex with the workers there. Yes, I don't hide it. I don't give a shit. Why would I?
Why'd they even include XQC in this article? It's just a still image of something that Hasan is watching. Why did they even include XQC in the article? He's just there. He's just a still image of his stream that Hasan is reacting to. Dude, okay, I get it. The algorithm. Okay, I respect the grind. I've had sex with, I've had sex with not even escorts. I've gone to a brothel, Artemis, in Berlin, and had sex with the workers there. He said, Piker has been outspoken on streams and Twitter before about sex workers' rights. I'm in a space dominated by gamers, where some of the more vocal minorities have reactionary points of view against sex work and sex workers, sometimes women in general. And it comes up more often than you think. I remember when I was still with when I was still with SEIU 1199, which is a local healthcare workers union. They were getting more and more like active in the political scene, and we were talking. Me and the person I was kind of like working under, we're talking to a candidate for office in DC. I won't say who it is, right? A candidate for office in DC, and I'm there to learn. That's why I'm there, and I'm listening to everything going down and all the questions being asked on whether the workers of said union is going to have their support behind said candidate. And eventually, the meeting's about over, and they say, Dylan, do you have any questions? And I was like, oh, great. And I just say, because I was researching sex work at the time, do you support sex workers? And I kind of just see the candidate kind of like reel back a little bit, not expecting the question. And he said, yeah, they're cool. I don't like. And he kind of gives a milquetoast answer, not dedicating himself to anything. But he didn't give an immediate rejection, which was fine by me. I doubt he was going to make himself the martyr for the sex worker cause, though, by putting it on his on his policy profile on his campaign website. But it is still like terribly stigmatized. All of this set off a debate online about whether sex work, stripping, and brothels are inherently exploitative. In 2016, Berlin authorities raided Artemis in a human trafficking investigation. Piker said that the clip is from a few months ago, but his visit to Artemis was from around 2010. Some of the people on Twitter use this as a point to argue that all brothel keeping and all sex work is exploitative, a line that sex worker exclusionary radical feminists use to make condition less safe for marginalized workers. Man, why is it every single time? Now, I hate to be this person. Why is it every time I hear radical feminists, right? You think it's gonna be something badass, like they're like super into women's rights, but it's always like, nah, we don't like trans people, or nah, screw sex workers. Or it feels like every time I hear the word radical feminist after anything, it ends up like attacking a certain group of women. It's like, is there a certain point in feminism where you get so radical, you just get so radical, you gotta start purity testing all the other women? Like, I don't know, man. Used to make conditions less safe for marginalized workers, pressuring platforms, payment processors, and lawmakers, and then pushing them further into the margin. And let's be clear, when we talk about websites where people can filter through those they want to give services to, when we talk about services like OnlyFans, which keeps people off of street corners, when we talk about these services, what that gives is sex workers more tools at their direct disposal, and it allows them to remove, a lot of times, the pimp from the equation. And it actually makes it so they can conduct their businesses in a healthier manner. And prohibition, let's be clear, going after all this isn't going to work, right? We can go after human trafficking. That's one thing. But to take the tools away from sex workers who are just trying to work in in a safe environment, just trying to keep themselves safe, just trying to provide their services so they can make ends meet, to target those services, to target those tools is absolutely god awful. It is absolutely terrible. I mean, let's be real, right? Prohibition on alcohol didn't work. The drug war has been a massive failure. Do we really think in the United States, or really on any planet, any nation on this planet, you can go from North Korea to America to Russia to any part of the globe, anywhere, that we're gonna really get rid of prostitution, sex work, any of these things? It is the world's oldest job, okay? We have had sex workers for a very, very, very long time to please man's most primal urges, and they're not going anywhere. So instead of trying to push it into the underground so we don't see what's happening and we pretend it isn't happening while people are put in dangerous conditions and we can't have any regulations on how workers are supposed to be treated and keep people safe, let's accept that this is a reality, this is a real industry, and do what we can to protect workers. Just like it's important to put regulations on the alcohol industry so people don't get hurt when consuming alcohol products. And regulations on the alcohol industry to make sure the workers there don't get hurt. I don't know. Now, one thing that is interesting here is that in 2016, Berlin authorities raided Artemis in a human trafficking investigation, and he went there in around 2010. Now, that makes me think whether or not, like Piker was supporting a business that was engaged in human trafficking. Now, we don't know about the case, obviously. Right? I guess we can go look into the case here. 900 police officers raid a brothel. Police said Thursday to raid an Artemis brothel late Wednesday was conducted by police officers as well as custom office employees and tax fraud investigators. Prosecutors said that sex workers at Artemis was forced to pretend they're self-employed so their bosses did not have to pay social security contributions. Police said that since the opening of the brothel in 2006, some 17.5 million euros, 19.7 million dollars in social security contributions had not been paid. So this seems, they said it was part of a human trafficking investigation. And it seems the majority of this article is talking about the tax fraud. Anyway, I doubt that Hasan knew of any of these goings on. It obviously was a business secret. So I don't know like at really what responsibility you could hold him into. If I went into a local store in my community and I bought like a mop off the shelf and I later found out that they were running an underground illegal like cocaine smuggling ring, I don't know how much responsibility you can hold the person who bought the mop. Like they didn't know. Not to mention the mob has been doing stuff like that all the time where they take money and they flush it through companies and businesses in order to, make it clean so they don't get in trouble. So I'm sure there's actually been a lot of people who have bought pizzas or spaghetti that ended up going into bullets for mobsters to go mow down their enemies. So the idea that he could at all be responsible for this or really have any moral fault here for this, I think would be ridiculous. I mean, is there any way we could hold him at any moral fault? This is the part of the story that is the most concerning to me. But the more I think about it, the less I'm really concerned that we could really hold Hasan to any moral fault here. I mean, what did he, he didn't know, and there was no way for him to know. I mean, he went there in 2010, and it took Berlin authorities 6 more years until they could raid the place. So it seems like the people covered their tracks pretty well if they were able to hoard up to $20 million in a lack of social security deposits. As one of the most popular and polarizing figures on Twitch, Piker regularly trends on Twitter for actions that may or may not be controversial if done by someone else. Yep. Piker was criticized for buying a big home, Hasan House, in West Hollywood, and after the Twitch hack, which revealed that he was among one of the most highly paid streamers on Twitch. Well, no, okay. To be clear, this right here was not revealed. Let's be clear. This wasn't like new information. We got specific dollar numbers, which was interesting. For the last 2 years, really, 2019 to 2021 of October, early October. We didn't just like find out now that he has a lot of money. He has a public sub count, just like I do in my top right-hand corner, right? Where it's always at like 50,000 or something. Well, mine sits at 850. And he's very public about the amount of money he's making from subs. What I think people are ignoring is not just the sub money, which is all that talked about. You got to also think about when it comes to Hasan, sub money, sponsorships, YouTube income, direct donations, so people can have text-to-speech if he does that. I know he most certainly has direct donations. I don't know if he takes Bitcoin or anything like that, but he most certainly has more streams of income. Most certainly. The general thrust of the criticism was that he was hypocritical for making a lot of money from capitalism while talking about how capitalism is bad. Articles about Artemis' raid relied on police reports, which said that the brothel constituted a brutal and illegal system that severely exploited dependent women. Just because the cops say they've conducted a human trafficking sting, however, doesn't necessarily mean there was any actual human trafficking happening. During raids, police have stolen from sex workers, brutally abused them, sexually assaulted them, and put them in handcuffs in the name of saving them. News reports about raids almost always rely on the word of the police spokesperson, but cops frequently lied to the media. Well, it seemed that they said it was a human trafficking investigation, but then the only thing that it was concrete in that article seemed to be basically what amounted to like tax fraud and an exploitative practice with women, which Hasan had no way of knowing. And even if it was human trafficking, it's like, what, does he walk in there and like they have human trafficking victim like tattooed on their forehead? In the Artemis thing, the 6 people detained were accused of tax fraud, see, right here, and withholding social security contributions. I don't think sex work and stripping is inherently exploitive, Shay told me. Many of the arguments people have against sex work bring up the same conditions people in other industries experience, she said. Bad customers, long hours, low wages, and strict schedules. It's not for everyone, she said, but for her, it was freeing and often fun. Many sex workers argue that they went into their line of work not out of desperation, but because for some people, it can pay well, offers flexible hours, and if they're flexible as well, that also helps, and they enjoy it. Okay. So, this article about ends here. This is a nothing burger in my opinion. I think that people consensually engaging in a transaction as this, like adults, is perfectly fine. I have zero problem with it. And I think people are just getting, to be a little blunt, their panties in a twist.